Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all my friends on the Earthship. Welcome to my little Sunday time, a time I reserve for the discussion of being the alchemist of your own life. Welcome. I'm Cindy Carter, an intuitive, an artist, an energy healer, and a spirit consultant. This series of alchemy podcasts that I have each Sunday is a place each week to gather and allow information that lets you see your role as the Master Alchemist. The last podcast was called Deal With It. And by that I meant deal with everything. Just deal with what reality is giving you. But let's do it kindly, with compassion for yourself. Bringing yourself into fuller awareness and clarity really needs to be done consciously so you can make your way through the volcanic mix of Earthship scenarios. When life and all its ugly displays become prevalent and you see some real atrocities that you couldn't have fathomed earlier, they start presenting themselves to you, well, this is getting ready to happen. Well, I hope that you're going to be really kind with yourself when you start viewing this earthly alchemy. You're witnessing the soup. I call it the soup of life, and you've got to deal with it with a kind and loving heart to survive it. I mean, this is the point, right? Or are you going to argue your version of death to me? Life is why you're here on Earth. So let's get that kind of straight first. Life. I didn't come here for death cycles. I did many times until this lifetime, and I figured it out. That we get to move into higher concepts of being life in our minds, in our bodies, in our souls. We get to become the alchemist, and we deal with life and what it has to bring to us. Even if it's secondary gain. Even if it's something that we're doing negatively to ourselves, from ourselves, as a secondary gain. What are you getting out of this repeated strife? What are you getting out of the death cycle? What are you getting out of unwellness? But I'm really kind of asking the self of you. What are you getting out of the death? Out of the strife? Out of the struggle of suffering? Have you allowed yourself to now be the victim of the hologram? Oh no, don't. Don't become the victim of this hologram. There's a way out of it. If you've allowed this, to be a chronic syndrome or a debilitating part of your life, this suffering, this struggling, what are you gaining from it? What is the secondary gain for your suffering? Now, some of you are going to say, I didn't ask for death. I didn't ask for struggling. I didn't ask for that, car wreck. Firstly, for all of you that might be triggered by the idea that your subconscious or some part of your being may have created a secondary gain by some type of suffering, either it's a physical ailment or a mental attitude or of suffering or playing the role of the sufferer. Now, here's a disclaimer. Big, asterisk. This is about compassion. The concept of secondary gain can be looked at with compassion. You are not to blame for your unawareness. You're not to blame for your actions. You're not to be blamed for how these things got to you, but you are responsible for how they are expressed from you, not how they got there. We've got to love ourselves through this remembering part of life this life pattern within us that's being unearthed. You are life as a God source within you. First and foremost. Remember that through this whole conversation. Remember that we live in a hologram, that you're a multidimensional being that is playing out a role in this body of 1,000 lives in this hologram of dimensions. Your past lives, your ancestral influence. They all led you here to this body, to this expression of life, all cramming itself into this one Merkaba. It's a lot of consciousness. But then there you go through the recycling bin, also known as reincarnation. You come into this body. Well, hello, welcome to Earth. Here's your packet of information. It contains all the documents that you need to live, a life on this Earth ship. But there's a hidden key to open up this complete packet of life information. You aren't really worthy of the information anyway, so off you go, no key, because most of your memories have been swiped. You get to relive all your mistakes and your misunderstandings as we put you through this reincarnation recycling bin. You'll now have other earthlings that you've had past lives with show up to replay your traumas with you. How fun! We'll call them twin flames or soulmates, so you can stay connected to your traumas. Again, the agenda of the hologram is not about life. It's about the recycling of death. Until you remember that you are not that. Okay, so off you go. Genetically, this is cellular mitosis, to repeat the death cycle. Not cellular proliferation. That's a whole other podcast I could do. Cellular proliferation is life, extending life to the cell, to the idea. Not allowing a hologram to teach me that I am the trauma continually over and over. So there you go. Off into the false timeline of a duality structured in some kind of existence that has sent eons of your expressions backwards in time to not be able to progress at all through the continued strife and the suffering and the view of repeated failure over and over to reach a view of some empowered soul. There is that possibility here in this life, in this body, by not accepting the duality structure around the hologram. For God's sakes, you're multidimensional. You're a view of life where love and happiness and freedom come from. These are concepts of true realities. These are realities based in the truth of your being, in love and peace and joy. The God source of your being, the divinity within you, has all the key ingredients to allow you to flourish and fly and conquer and attain a view that's, not right, not wrong, and that you are worthy. And there's a lot of traits otherwise about mental and emotional miasms of, problems and continued emotional traumas that show up in all the humans that can't remember their truth. They can't remember their grandeur or the peace that's palpable that lives in every cell of their body if they would just allow it out. When a life force component is released and realized, say the peace is remembered in the body, in the belief patterns, in the ideas, the repetitive suffering, the traumas, the miasms of all kinds are transmuted. This is alchemy. Lower vibration is affected by higher vibration. You must actually do the opposite of the thing that is happening. If you're suffering in your mind, you must uplift your mind. Yeah, right. I just heard one of you say that. Yeah, right. Seriously. It's as simple as that. When you see suffering, you get to choose. When you are suffering, you get to choose. Do I accept suffering, say, of another person as my own? Or can I witness this suffering with a kind and loving, open heart and it not hurt me? And then when I espouse myself, am I suffering through my expression? If I choose to suffer in a continued way, in a way that's excessive and repetitive and self-destructive, self-sabotaging perhaps, suffering can be in a lot of different ways, of course, but here are a few I'm confronted with in my counseling. Like, I'm a victim of this world. This world sucks and so do I. I'm really not worthy of not suffering. Hey, look at all the suffering I have attained it through this and this and this. I will continue to suffer. I'm the greatest at suffering. I've had suffering in the past and I always will. These are ideas of false realities and false beliefs that are not based in a life pattern of cellular proliferation. We have to get back to cellular proliferation, which is life infusing life. Well, all those ideas of repetitive suffering, just because something has happened in the past, that means, because I was a killer in the, fourth dimensional galactic war 48 lifetimes ago, I killed many people on another planet. Well, I guess that's what I'm doomed to do in this life. That's basically what you're saying. You're multidimensional. So you can't bring up just the car wreck, when you were 12. And you can't bring up the, thing that happened to you, in your early childhood days or in your teens when you made some bad decisions. It has nothing to do with that. You made some really awful decisions also in many other lives, but you also cannot forget all the beautiful decisions of life-affirming life that have come down to you as consciousness that you're not seeing. So that's why I'm here. Suffering works for you. This is where we are. Secondary gain. Self-awareness and reflection of one's life and one's place, but being aware of the self, it's a trait that many are having trouble with right now. How aware are you of the attachment or the thread or the unconscious movement towards negativity and destruction and death? Do you have that right now? Is it affecting your life? This issue will come up more and more, and people come to witness these worldwide networks of controlled trauma that are getting ready to come down and be shown to you. There'll be some deep black operative 3-letter agencies worldwide that'll be exposed for their trauma-inducing programs that you and I had been involved in our whole lives. When that comes down, you better be able to look at a truth and look at your secondary gain. Being aware of yourself, not what's happening around us, aware of ourselves so that we can understand that if we're facing, having a troubled life, having trouble being happy, having problems with all the things basically in our life, that what it comes down to when you adopt a false belief is you need to look at what is a secondary gain. When you become preoccupied with your false beliefs, you bring a very low vibrational attachment thread to your body, and it does activate every kind of old wound from the recycling bin that you went through to get here. And you might even have these same wounds opened continually by society that allows death as a theme, disempowerment, lack of vitality, lack of sovereign creative expression. That's the hologram. That's the soup. Be the matrix. Be aware of the self in the soup that's navigating all these dimensions. So do you feel right about your disempowerment? I mean, you certainly have been reinforced to believe that you're right about your suffering. I mean, it's not your fault. You've had religion teach you that suffering is okay, that you've had books and education and your mom and dad. This is just what we've all known. Look at the wrong in the world too long, and it's right to suffer. What? This makes no sense. I don't really believe in right or wrong per se, but because there are levels of acceptable and not acceptable and harmful and not harmful, but truth is a perception of the one viewing it. And the collection of views from all the humans forms an opinion, a collective opinion. So the opinion is you are disempowered as a being on this earth ship. Well, now you get to decide differently. Since 2012, you get to decide differently. When the Earth's trajectory changed, you got new cosmic information that allows you to choose another view of your life. Did you not get the memo? You seem to be suffering still. What can we do but maybe have you look at a secondary gain? Before you can allow yourself to get out of this low vibrational hold over your body and your mind, you might want to look at your secondary gain. If you've deemed yourself right in your choice to suffer, this might present itself as a gain in your life. What's the advantage for having this difficult aspect in your life? What might you lose by giving up this aspect of your life, really? So here's some traits to look at for secondary gain. And they're, just a lot like self-sabotage, really. Bringing negative attention continually to your attention, to your voice, to your observation, to your way of life, to the way you view, the way you feel, negative attention. Unrealistic views, phobias, anxieties, unworthiness, rejected, unhealthy attachments to abuse, to neglect, to trauma, to humiliation, which all need to be released. We don't hang on to these things. And if you do, you're working through the hologram of soup, of repetitive trauma, of the recycling bin where you haven't remembered who you are, you didn't get the memo. So I'm going to pass out memos now for all the people who didn't get them. You don't have to please others to obtain love. Or, to feel you're special or indispensable or one of the chosen ones. To look good or not look bad. Irresponsible venting into others' auric fields. Legitimizing your belief because of the injustice and unfairness that you see. Because I have done this. Remember that, interplanetary galactic war from 48 lifetimes ago. So this is just a little list of things that show up as traits and behaviors of secondary gain. So now let's look at secondary losses that might be associated with wellness or not having this belief or that idea. People might stop loving me if I no longer need assistance with my health. This is a real truth. I may have to give up my friends that don't tolerate my wellness and happiness. Ooh, there's a thread to staying unwell. I may have to release my grudges, my past wrongs, my past unfairnesses that trigger my abused reactions. What do you mean? That would mean that I didn't have the trauma, and I can't use it as a hierarchy. for myself. I was in so much trauma that I can't do this, won't do this. You may have to give up doubt. There's a lot of stuff that has to come up. What will it cost you to give up some of these things? It might cost you to recognize and give up what doesn't work in your life in a conscious and adaptive way. The cost might mean relinquishing all the special privileges that you've had to have, during your unwellness, at home and at work, and with your family and your friends, your coworkers. That could be a huge change for your betterment. Relinquishing the special privileges that you've awarded yourself for your suffering. You may have to give up doubt, denial, and all the dysfunctional coping strategies that you've created in your secondary gain that keep you in unwellness and unbalance and keeps you as the victim of outside events and outside issues. And you wonder why it snowballs. You may have to stop your mind from going to the past constantly, repeating, all your failures. Stop tolerating this narrative unless there is a gain. Unless there's something that you have to give up. There are going to be things you have to give up to allow harmony in your mind and your life. So if there is a secondary gain, there are attitudes and beliefs you got to give up in order to come into harmony. The things that have been there to prop you up in your unwellness now need to be handled and deal with it kindly. Look at the secondary gains that you have around being disempowered in your life, of not allowing your truth to shine. The gain of keeping the long-lasting story of this hurt, and then you make this your so-called life, which is really not life. It's death, swinging wildly out of center. Recognizing in yourself what you need to deal with and how to deal with your unconscious actions by observing what you're getting out of it, really. You can make a choice of uplifting this life, but it really does take the work of looking at yourself. This hologram soup is filled to the brim with strife, but is that you? Only if you choose. It's not me. I chose that a long time ago. Look at yourself clearly with a conscious, grounded mind. Do the work to clear yourself of these unrealistic and irrational belief systems that keep you away from life and the grace of life itself. I had a mentor once that was teaching me hypnotherapy. And during his teachings, he told us of a case where a lady was in a wheelchair in front of the therapist. And during her deep trance of subconscious movement, she was asked, "Can you stand up?" She was a paraplegic. She hadn't, stood in many years. She had no use of her legs. But during this hypnotherapy, she stood right up in front of the therapist. The therapist asked, "Oh, you can stand?" "Yes, I can stand." And she sat right back down. And she said, "Well, would you like to continue to stand?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I would have to go back to work." You see, that was her choice. The therapist could not intervene. That was the subconscious choice. So to allow the conscious mind to make a choice didn't happen that day. This being in that body chose not to consciously choose life. They had a secondary gain to their suffering. My wish for you is to realize grace and to realize life, using your compassion for yourself and look at yourself clearly, without dysfunctional eyes, through the God source of your being. If you need to allow more grace in your life, please do that. I have some grace on my website called the Template of Grace. It's an 11-day MP3 download that might assist you in allowing more grace. It really has been very powerful for a lot of people. It's only $33 US. It's on my website. I'll be having some upcoming workshops. I'll have an alchemy workshop, a short half-day workshop, and then I'll also be having a 2-day advanced workshop called Holographic Healing, which is a hands-on modality. I'll be doing that in Bend, Oregon, and Reno, Nevada in June of 2019, and in Asheville, North Carolina in July of 2019. The exact dates will be on my website really soon. So in our understanding of being the alchemist of your life, let us remember that you are the divine within the soup. This hologram around this earth ship has many angels floating within it that believe that they are not worthy and stay ignorant and uncomfortable and depressed and suppressed, not remembering, not caring that you are life. You are the joy that precedes a rainbow. You're the chill from the wind before it even arrives. You're the brightness of the sun as it shines upon us. Just look at the gains to your suffering to get out of your suffering. This assists all of us on the Earthship, and I thank you. Many blessings.